Hello, everyone in podcast land. Welcome to this week's episode. Today, we're talking about the iPhone 14 being hit by a recession.
We talk about the update to the Twitter v. Elon saga.
We're talking about foldable laptops.
And we talk about Steam Deck impressions.
All right, on to topic number one. It appears Apple has been hit by a recession. They have told their suppliers that they're pulling back on iPhone production. So they're telling them that they want to reduce the amount of iPhones they're producing by 6 million units in the second half of this year, which puts them at about 90 million units, which is what they did last year in 2021 at this point. Now, there's also a rumor that the average price of the iPhone may be going up. It appears that the demand is higher for Pro models compared to the regular iPhone 14s. They don't seem to be selling that many iPhone 14s, possibly because it looks exactly like the 13, and it is exactly the 13.
Yeah.
Some numbers from China. So in the first 3 days that the iPhone 14 was available, the demand was 11% lower than for the iPhone 13. So they're selling a considerable amount less than the iPhone 13 in China specifically. Now, globally, the demand for personal electronics, so like cell phones, tablets, laptops, it's been suppressed by things like inflation, fears of a recession, a global recession, and other geopolitical reasons. So it's not just Apple, but we're hearing that Apple, who's typically, a very successful company, who's always pushing the amount of iPhones and stuff that they're selling, they seem to be getting hit by this, right? This global drawback in terms of personal electronics. So what are your thoughts on hearing about this? On hearing that iPhone is saying, hey, or Apple is saying, we're not going to produce as many iPhones. We don't seem to be selling as many iPhones. Do you think Apple has something to worry about? Or do you think this is okay, this is a global trend and we're just hearing about it from Apple first?
Yeah, I think this could potentially be Apple running into problems that Android manufacturers have had in the past, where as their consumers start to get more ingrained and more savvy in the items that they're purchasing, they're going to want to see bigger and more significant changes from year to year. Whereas in the past, Apple has done a really good job with going from a mainline model to an S model to a model that's slightly different than that S model to another, S model. Like they're not very quick on changing design and features from year to year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an issue that Android used to have. Samsung, from the Galaxy S3 all the way up to, I believe, the Galaxy S5, not a lot of changes there. And the two real models that really kind of focused on a lot of change for Samsung was one, the original Galaxy S2, because that was a huge change for them, and it was a very popular model. But then the Galaxy S6, and if anyone remembers what they did differently there, that was a huge redesign for Samsung, where they started going away from plastic devices into the metal and glass, and they started introducing the screens that kind of folded over the edges, the waterfall displays, and kind of started that whole trend. And that's what got people excited about the phones again. I think what's happening with Apple right now is, even though the design changed in the iPhone 12, I think anyone who has had anything since an iPhone 10 or iPhone X and forward doesn't really see a lot of changes, because the main feature of the notch has been almost identical from the 10, 10R, 11, 12, 13, and 14. And really everything else in terms of processing and stuff like that hasn't really increased that much, because Apple's already had this huge lead in terms of processing on their phones. They're already fantastic. So it's like one of those things where there's not a lot of reason for people to upgrade. Now, the interesting thing is that, and I don't know if this is something that generally happens, I would imagine it's not, but the Pro models of the iPhone 14 are outselling the base models. And I think that's important, because the Pro actually has a new feature, even if, I personally think it's a little bit of a gimmick. but the dynamic island, which I said I would never call it, but I did. This new pill-shaped notch on these new Pro models is enough to get people excited to upgrade the phone. And I think the normal iPhone 14 models aren't enough. And I think this is going to be something that Apple needs to reevaluate how they do phones in the future, because I would have imagined that they wanted to stick with this iPhone 12 design on the base models for quite a bit longer. And I think this is going to make them reevaluate, you know what, maybe we do need to do more year to year. Maybe we do need to get people more excited about the hardware of our phones, and not just rely on last year's model with a slight spec bump or a new crash mode or something like that. We kind of need to do something cool. And I think that's just what's happening here. I think people don't think the iPhone 14 is all that cool. And not only that, if you wanted a base level iPhone 14, you could also get a base level iPhone 12 or an iPhone 13 and pretty much have the exact same device. So yeah, to me, there's just not a lot of reason to get that base level iPhone 14, but there is more reason to get the Pro. So yeah, I think it's just a situation where these phones aren't that exciting, and that's kind of affecting their bottom line. But how about you? Do you think this is a situation where these phones just aren't exciting? Do you think this is probably, people saying that they don't want iPhones anymore? I don't know. I don't think this is as dire of a situation as maybe the articles might make it seem, but it's interesting.
Um, I definitely agree with you. I think if you look at, as you said, the 12, the 13, the 14, they're the exact same chassis, right? Nothing has changed with those. And as you put before, Apple was on a 2-year design cycle, right? They'd have the 4, they had the 3, the 3S, the 4, the 4S, the 5, the 5S. And so every 2 years, you would have a brand new looking iPhone,
Mm,
right? And it's a joke that people are buying the new iPhone because it looks new, but I mean it's a reality.
yeah,
People like things that look new. That's why I don't know, anytime there's a new car that comes out or a new car or gaming console, whatever it is, if it's designed new, it's gets people interested, right? So now it seems like they're on a 3-year design cadence. There's rumors that for next year, the iPhone 15, they're supposed to change how it looks on the outside at least. So I think that will get people re-interested in the phone. But from the 13 to the 14, the outside is the same and the inside is the same because it's the same A15 chip, right? I think,
yeah,
okay, maybe a little bit more RAM, one extra GPU core, but it's essentially the same phone, so people aren't interested. Now, when you look at the 14 Plus, that's something that could get people more interested, but I think that's still not out yet. I think it's coming out early October. So I think that is something that definitely could increase sales numbers for just, let's call them the non-pro iPhone 14s, but we're still waiting to see. Maybe people aren't as interested because they know that there's a bigger screen size available that
yeah,
they don't have to buy the pro price or pay the pro price for. And like you mentioned, the island everyone joked around about, but that is legitimately something new for the pro devices. The 12, 13 Pros, essentially the same phone, but the 14 Pro, you have the island, you have a new processor again, so it gives people a reason to buy this new pro device.
yeah,
Whereas, and even if you look at, the user interface of it, right? This is a completely new user interface too when we talk about how the island interacts with your apps, with your widgets, with that sort of thing. So software wise, that's doing something that no other iPhone is doing right now. So that's another reason why, hey, people are interested in this phone, are more interested in the pro device than the regular, because typically they run the same software, the pros and the regular devices,
yeah,
right? But now this is actually no, this is a software thing that only the pro device can do, which is why people are interested in it. And I think we'll see similar things from other companies, but I think iPhone, because they're always in the news, we just happen to hear about this one first. Because if you look at phone designs, right, they've gotten pretty stale. They've gotten pretty stagnant.
hmm,
If you look at the Galaxy series, right, from the S21 to the S22, they're essentially the same phone,
hmm,
just a slight refinement. Now the Ultra, yeah, completely new phone because it's actually a Note, but slight refinements. When we look at the folds that they just came out with, right? The Flip 4 and the Fold 4, it's the same design, just slight refinements. Oh, we made the hinge a little smaller, the battery's a bit bigger, the screen's a little bit bigger too, but it's the same phone. So I think, as you said, people are getting more savvy to the technology that they're buying, and they're seeing that this phone doesn't look much newer from last year's model. It doesn't really do anything new from last year's model. So I think globally, people won't be upgrading or buying new devices as much as they have in the past. And that's simply because they don't really have a reason to.
Yeah. Oh,
Nope,
sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I also think Samsung does something that's really smart where they build in what could potentially be the future of their phones in flagship devices that eventually trickle down to consumer devices. And I remember, and sometimes not even flagship devices, just because they make so many products, there could be something like, I remember back in the day, they made the Galaxy Mega. This was back when phones were like 5 inches, 4 inches large, and no one really wanted a big phone. And then they released this phone called the Galaxy Mega, which was this gigantic phone, the first ever phablet, so to speak. And they realized, hey, people actually want a big phone. And then phones just started to get bigger and bigger because they did that research, they did that. And look at what happened with foldables, right? The original Galaxy Flip was a very expensive phone. Not great, but it was expensive. And then people thought, you know what, this is actually cool. And now you look at this new Flip that's very similar to the last one. But what is the biggest thing that they did the last time they released that phone? They brought it down to a regular price of phone so that people who want something new and exciting can actually afford this new flip phone. And I don't really know the numbers on how much these segments are actually growing for Samsung right now, but at least they're doing something to get people excited about their phones. I think Apple needs to do something similar. They need to bring something fun and interesting into their phones. Or maybe they don't even need to, but it would be nice to see them do that. The one thing I will ask you though is, based on this information, because Apple can do some really easy wins to get people excited about iPhones again. They could do things like put in USB-C, which I think would get a lot of people excited. They could make a portless phone, which I think, despite the fact that it's taking away features, I think design-wise that could also get people excited as well if it's just this very clean design. But also, maybe to drum up excitement of the non-Pro models, do you think Apple will bring the pill-shaped notch to its non-Pro devices maybe as early as the iPhone 15?
I could see them doing USB-C.
Mm-hmm.
Also because the European Union has kind of mandated that they need to.
Yeah.
So I could see them doing USB-C. I really hope they don't do a portless iPhone, but I think they hold off the pill cutout for one more design refresh.
Mm.
I think the iPhone 15, I mean, I hope that they change the design of the base model, but think they still have that separation of, okay, the pill cutout is a pro feature and the iPhone 15 looks different on the outside, but not the pill. And then for the 16, I could see them saying, we brought the revolutionary dynamic island down to our, regular devices, but still leave it 60 hertz and still no, always on
True.
display. And,
Yeah.
I could still see them. Yeah. I, I honestly don't think they will ever move from 60 hertz on their non-pro devices, which is unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think for the 15, no pill cutout. For the 16, pill cutout. But mm, probably USB-C for the 15, if I had to guess.
I would hope so. I'm actually excited for one of the few years to see what the next iPhone looks like, because I wouldn't be surprised if we get something that's actually really interesting compared to this year, just out of necessity from Apple's point.
Yeah, yeah, because they have not done anything interesting really for the base models.
Yeah.
On to topic number 2, a development in the Twitter v. Elon Musk case. Now, there's been a few headlines of actually people outside of the case speaking up about the whole Twitter situation. Former Disney CEO said that back in 2016, Disney was considering buying the platform. They're actually very close. The board of directors had agreed to it, but they went back, they did some, some digging, some researching, and they found that a substantial portion of Twitter users were bots or fake, which is why they pulled out of the deal, which is why Disney didn't end up buying Twitter. And that's back in 2016. Also, recently, a whistleblower by the name of Peter Mudge Zatko, who is a former head of security for Twitter. He's a pretty big name in the cybersecurity industry. He has a long track record of forcing secrets out into the open. He's a hacker legend. He's worked for DARPA, for Google, for Stripe. He's a pretty well-known figure. And he's raised concerns. He's filed a complaint last couple months. He raised a complaint in August with the Security and Exchange Commission, with the Department of Justice, and with the FTC. And he's warned that half of Twitter's servers were running out of date, vulnerable software, and executives withheld dire facts about the number of breaches that the platform had and the lack of protection for user data. He said that thousands of employees have wide-ranging, poorly tracked access to company software, and for years has led to embarrassing hacks, including, as we've talked about on this podcast, the commandeering of high-profile accounts, including Elon Musk, former President Barack Obama, and Donald Trump, which, if you think back to the podcast we did about the whole Twitter hack and, someone stealing Bitcoin, this was a result of that, right?
Mhm.
So he filed a complaint in August, and he warned the board that early in his tenure, so right when he started working for Twitter, they could lose the ability to restart their servers due to overlapping outages in their data centers, which actually could cause the servers to be down for months, or even possibly just for them to lose all of their data completely. And this came close to happening in 2021, where people who worked for Twitter were actually worried that this platform could be gone forever, right? Because of just their poor infrastructure. So this guy, whistleblower, came out, and this recent, the Disney CEO recently said that, hey, this is why we didn't buy them in 2016. And now Elon Musk is saying, see, I told you guys Twitter was fishy. Told you, they weren't being honest, to try and bolster his case for why he wants to back out of the deal. Now, none of this is really why he originally wanted to back out. I mean, the bots, you could say that's part of it. But recently it came to light that Elon Musk hired his own private consultants to figure out how much of Twitter's users were spam or bot accounts. They actually said, hey, 5 to 11% are bot accounts, which is exactly what Twitter told Elon.
Mm.
So it doesn't seem like his justification for there being too many bots, because Twitter told him exactly how many they expect to be bots. It doesn't seem like his justification for backing out of the deal is going to work, but it's interesting to see that there are all these other underlying issues with Twitter. There have been these long-standing underlying issues that are coming to light now. So I guess my question to you, what are your thoughts on the whole bot situation with Twitter, that it's been a known problem for a while, but also, these security flaws that have also seemed to be present for a while too? Do you think this is going to help Elon's case at all? Or do you think that this isn't relevant to him trying to back out of the deal?
I think it's a little bit of both. First of all, bots are a problem on every platform. YouTube, Twitter, I would imagine, TikTok and Instagram. Like, bots are just an issue because it's so easy to make a bunch of bots. I even remember there was a point in YouTube's history where there would be a lot of bot subscriptions to channels just so they could bolster their subscription count. So yeah, this has always been an issue. And if anyone's been in the comment sections on YouTube recently, they'll see, hey, bots are a problem there as well. So that's just the reality of being an internet company in 2022. But then there's also, this comparison of the potential purchase by Disney. And this is the thing. All that research and looking into purchasing the company was done by the company that was trying to purchase them behind closed doors in a professional manner. That's how you go about purchasing a company, not making a bunch of tweets and then offering a bunch of money before you do your due diligence, and then after that deal, first of all, also threatening the company to take the deal, and then when they finally do, then you evaluate your purchase and the back out. To me, that's just irresponsible on Musk's part. And like you mentioned, he was able to hire an independent investigation on the amount of bots, and it kind of came in line with what Twitter was saying. But also, like, that's all stuff you do before you put in the offer. And once you put in the offer and you say, this is what I want, and you threaten the company to take your offer, I feel like that's the point where you realize you did your due diligence to buy this company. It can't be after the fact. Because, I mean, I think that sets a precedent to now anybody who decides, any billionaire who decides they want to buy out a company, can then go back on that from any random idea that they come up with later on. It should be, you have to do your due diligence before you put in that purchase. So I don't know. It's one of those things where, yeah, I can understand where maybe this bot issue is a little concerning, and also for the amount that he spent, maybe, you know, he's feeling a little bit of buyer's remorse. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Buyer's remorse is something that we can all kind of identify with, and not all of us have spent $44 billion on something. So yeah, it's understandable from his point, but I don't think when you're dealing with this amount of money and you're dealing with this level of professionalism, that the way he went about it is the right way at all.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the technical issues with Twitter, that's not surprising to me at all, for a couple of reasons. One, Twitter has struggled to make money for years, and even though it has a huge user base, they are not a Facebook, they're not a Google, they're not the typical tech company that you would see that just has billions upon billions of dollars to spend on everything. I mean, they should, and they should be focusing on their infrastructure 100%. This is not an excuse, but the reality is Twitter is not a cash heavy company. And I think that's starting to show in where they're cutting corners. Where they're cutting corners is absolutely unacceptable, but honestly, it's not surprising. And I hope the fact that this information is starting to get out there, if it's actually legit, forces them to push the money into getting their infrastructure more secure and better. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people on Twitter. There's a lot of verified people on Twitter, and the information and the reach that these accounts have is very sensitive, and we can't have another situation like the Bitcoin scam that happened a while ago happen again. They need to make sure that those types of things don't happen, because these are legitimate people that are communicating with the world out there, and it's very easy for someone to impersonate these people if they get access to it. So yeah, this is just one of those situations where I think Twitter grew too quickly and they started cutting corners, and they need to fix that ASAP.
Yeah. So the trial hasn't officially started yet, deciding whether or not Elon is going to have to pay up. That will start on October 17th in Wilmington, Delaware. And it's going to be a 5-day trial. So it's going to be a very quick trial once it does start. But yeah, October 17th, definitely report more at that time. On to topic number 3. We've had foldable phones. Now we have foldable laptops. Now, recently, Asus came out with their ZenBook 17 Fold. It's a foldable laptop, essentially, right? It's a giant tablet, 17 inches, that folds in half and has a keyboard that you attach to it. So it turns into a laptop. I think it's a 12.5-inch screen with the keyboard attached to it, or you can remove the keyboard, fold it out to a 17.3-inch screen, 4:3 aspect ratio, 2.5K, huge screen. It's a new form factor that we've seen. They're not the first ones to do it. I think Lenovo had a ThinkPad X1 that they came out with last year. There's also a 2022 update that they've also had. So it's an emergent form factor. we haven't seen many companies do it yet so far, right? We haven't seen Samsung's version. We haven't seen anything from Apple. Probably will never see anything from Apple, but it's an interesting form factor nonetheless. So I guess my question to you, what have you seen of these foldable laptops or these, I mean, it's really a tablet, but what have you seen of these foldable devices? And do you think it's something that's going to stay? Do you think it's a market that's going to grow? Is it something that you're interested in, having a giant tablet that can fold into a laptop that's a multi-purpose device?
Yeah, I don't know if this is something that I'm interested in right now, but specifically talking about the Asus ZenBook Fold 17, which is the more recent product that was released from Asus. Every time I see a video of it, I'm amazed. It reminds me of something from like science fiction, of like this big tablet that folds up into like a book, but then can also be a laptop. Like it's just so cool conceptually, but it still has the same downsides of a foldable device. You know, the soft screen, the worry about durability going forward, and the price. These are very premiumly priced products. But that being said, they still get me excited. I've said many times I love the Microsoft Duo, and one of the products they originally unveiled with the Microsoft Duo was the Microsoft Neo, which was just a bigger version of the Duo that was very similar to these folding ideas, but was two separate screens, and then you could just put a keyboard down and then on one of the screens, and then you get like a touch bar at the top of the keyboard, and then your
Mm.
regular laptop screen. And I love that. I thought this is the coolest thing ever. I just loved seeing what happens when you put the keyboard down and the screen just automatically adjusts. It just looked so cool. Unfortunately, that product was canceled, and that was probably the right decision because even the Microsoft Duo didn't do very well. But every time I see something like this, it just, I think it's really cool. I love seeing when the keyboard gets put down on this laptop or on the tablet, it automatically turns into like a laptop form factor. Yeah, it's just really, really cool. They definitely have ways to grow or room to grow. I would love to see, you know, slimmer bezels maybe in the future, or, you know, a more seamless kind of screen where you don't get the crease in the middle. That's still
Mhm.
an issue we're having with foldables right now. And I'm glad that they're making these because it forces us to kind of try new things going forward. But yeah, I'm in the same boat on this product as I am with the Galaxy Fold, where it's like, yeah, this is so cool, but I can't imagine myself using one of these um, over like a traditional tablet or a laptop. But I don't know. Like, do you, if, let's say, for example, these products right now were the same price as like an iPad Pro and this foldable, so you're not paying the foldable premium. Do you think this product is doing enough to convince people to say, okay, I don't need the best iPad with pen support and all this stuff. I'll use this soft screen foldable tablet? Or do you think we need to maybe drastically change the way we think about foldables because the downsides of the soft screen and the crease is just not doing it for people?
I think at this moment, foldable, yeah, at this moment, the foldable market isn't really competing with tablets,
Mm,
in my opinion, because, like you said, the soft screen, this model in particular, the keyboard doesn't work the best all the time. There's parent issues. It doesn't wirelessly charge when you connect it to the laptop. There's a separate cable for it.
yeah.
Its internals aren't even suitable for things like video editing or graphical editing. So I think this particular model doesn't quite cut it yet. Even if it was the same price and you're not paying that foldable premium, I think for its internals and what it does, it's not there yet. I agree with you. It's remarkable that you can have a device. It's a device that big, a 17-inch tablet essentially that can then fold into a laptop. I think that's very cool and something from science fiction, but it's not the most usable yet, but this is still like first, second generation of foldables, right? It wasn't really until, if you look at Samsung and their Z Folds and Z Flips, it wasn't really until the third edition that we said, "Oh, wow, this is actually like a viable device." And it's still not competing with the iPhones, with the regular candy bar phones. I think, you know, just the versatility of it, I think a foldable tablet laptop is it could be the future,
Hmm.
but we're just not there yet. If you had something like, I don't know, if you had something with some sort of stylus or pen support to the level of the Samsung Galaxy Tabs or the iPads and iPad Pros, I think then it would be it would definitely be competing with those kind of tablets, but we're not there yet.
Hmm.
And because of the durability, like you said, because it doesn't have the internals to keep up with them, I definitely couldn't see myself going with one of those instead. And I don't think a lot of people are. But I don't know, maybe Samsung is working on the foldable tablet because they're pretty much dominating the foldable phone market right now. I'm sure they could take a lot of their expert expertise, a lot of their experience there, and just turn it into their tablet laptop division, or yeah, turn it into their laptop tablet division. But personally, at least the way things are right now, I prefer the form factor of something like the Asus Flow Z13,
Hmm.
where it's a tablet that you attach the keyboard to. So then it turns into a laptop. The 17.3-inch screen, that's great that you can fold that up and put it in your bag. That's remarkable, but I don't need something, I guess I don't need a screen that large to carry around on the road with me,
That's a good point. Yeah.
right? Like 13, yeah, that's great. Even like the 16-inch MacBook Pro, I mean, if someone was giving me the device for free, yeah, sure, great. I definitely take it. But like that's pretty large carry around day to day. And I guess especially if you're not doing like hardcore video graphical editing on it every day. So it's a cool form factor, not for me. I think it's not for most people. And I think we're still a generation or two away from it.
So in that case, then, do you think there is a future for foldables, either in the tablet, phone, or laptop space, or do you think maybe that's just not something that people want or need? Like, do you think in the next 2 3 years that foldables could be the next big thing in mobile computing? Computing.
I mean, phones, yes.
Mhm.
Tablets, laptops, no. Yeah. I s- we'd have to have like huge breakthroughs, I would say, in the tablet laptop space. But I mean, it could be if they get to the same level of computing power as a laptop, as a dedicated desktop, then I think it could take over.
Mhm.
Because if you could then just have one device where it's all right, this is my computer. And when I'm at home, I open it up to the 17-inch model and it can do everything I need to do at home. And then, oh, I'm on the road. Let me just fold this down. Let me take it on the road with me. If we get to that point and it's as powerful, no, it can't be completely as powerful as the desktop just because, thermal management and whatnot. But let's say if you get it to as powerful as a laptop right now, to have one device that does everything, I think that is the future. Whether or not it's a foldable device, I don't know, because then you're sacrificing something in order to make the device foldable.
Yeah.
I still think the Z13, where it's a tablet that is as powerful as a laptop. And when you're on the go, you can take this smaller screen that it's still just as powerful. When you're at home, you can plug it into your setup at home and it turns into a computer. It turns to your at home workstation. I think that is the ideal situation. And I don't think you gain anything really. I don't think you I don't think you gain enough from having it be a foldable screen to make this the future. I think having one device that powers everything, so you have the same amount of, or you have the same amount of power whether you're at home plugged in or you're on the road or you're commuting on the bus or a train. I think that is the future, but I don't think you gain anything really from folding it, yeah, to overtake that. Now a phone makes a bit more sense, but then again, people aren't really using phones for that sort of stuff, right? People aren't really doing hardcore computing from their phones. But I see more of a use case for a phone unfolding into a tablet maybe for reading, maybe for viewing purposes, maybe for, document signing, that is more useful to me. Yeah, that's more useful in my mind, a phone opening into a tablet than a tablet opening into, or I guess, yeah, I don't know, a laptop opening into a massive tablet.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Honestly, I don't disagree with you. It's just for me personally, like as cool as foldables are, and we could even talk about rollables and all these new OLED tech that takes a small thing and makes it into a bigger thing. It's all really cool. But for me personally, and I might be the only one who thinks this, I think Microsoft's approach was the right approach. I like the idea of two independent screens, whatever size, whether it's phone sized or tablet sized, with the Duo or the Neo, that fold like a book into a smaller device is just such a great idea. You get the rigidity of like and durability of a solid state screen, not one that's folding. You don't have a crease. And yeah, there's a little bit of a gap in the middle. But we've seen screens that have almost no bezels. Like that's not a hard thing to accomplish or to get rid of
Hmm.
going forward. So I don't know. To me, that just takes almost all of the advantages of a foldable tablet or laptop, but with none of the disadvantages of the crease in the middle, the soft screen, the durability issues. So yeah, I would hope that more companies explore that idea because personally, I would love a Microsoft Duo or Neo, the bigger tablet sized version of the Duo that runs full Windows. And the reason why I say that is, to me, it wouldn't even need to be the most powerful device. That could replace my phone, my tablet, my laptop, all in one device. Where if I need to get something done, I have a regular tablet size screen that I can just, do something quickly if I want to scroll YouTube or something like that. If I need to type, I can put it in a laptop form factor and I could type up and get an email done. But if I need to do productivity, which we've seen with the Duo, having those two independent screens is so good for productivity. So it's like, I don't know, I just find it such a great idea, and I'm kind of sad that it didn't succeed. But yeah, I don't know if necessarily the foldables or rollables or this cool OLED tech that you can make all these different size screens is definitely the future. But I don't know. It could be what you were saying. Like maybe we just need a couple of generations for the concept to be proven.
Yeah.
All right, and our final topic of the podcast is first impressions of the Steam Deck. We talked about on the podcast before, the Steam Deck was my number one product of last year. It was a product or device that I was super excited about. And I theorized that I would probably never get it because of just how difficult it was to get your hands on them. But a few months ago, Valve announced that they were able to increase production and they were going to start to accelerate out Steam Deck orders. Originally, I ordered it, I think about 8 months ago, and they were originally telling me that I would get it sometime in 2023. But a few days ago, maybe about a week ago, I got an email saying, "Hey, your Steam Deck is just about ready. Do you want to put in your order?" I did, and I finally got it. I've had it for a few days, and it is quite the device. We talked about a few topics ago about buyer's remorse. And originally when I got the device, I did have a bit of buyer's remorse. It is a very interesting device. And just to break it down, it's a big handheld PC, pretty much, that runs a version of Linux called SteamOS that has direct access to the Steam store, and it plays games that were originally designed for Windows. So because of that, there needs to be some kind of translation, and there's a software called Proton, which translates the DirectX kind of architecture that the games are built off on Windows to this Linux OS. And not all games work, but there are a lot that do. And for me, my original impression of this product when I first got it was, oh, this is a mess. I originally tried to get my current games library working. I didn't buy anything new on the Steam Deck yet. I was just trying to see what of my current games would work well on this device. And originally, a lot of the games that I had were not deck verified, and some of them were even unsupported. One of my favorite games, Resident Evil 3, was completely unsupported, but I decided to install it anyways. And weirdly, that worked flawlessly. But then a game like Cyberpunk 2077, which was verified and supposed to work, I had a lot of issues with. So it was kind of like this weird situation where I was playing around with things quite a bit. But I will say this. After my first impressions of it being a little bit finicky and a little frustrating trying to get things to work, I realized something. And that was, I was trying to, and I spoke about this on the podcast before, I was trying to use this device as a PC, doing everything that I would have done on my PC, including mods and all of that kind of stuff, and running into little issues here and there. But when I use the device as a handheld console, like I would a Switch, just going to the store, picking something, installing it, and playing it, it worked surprisingly well. And it was kind of magical, honestly, of when this product works, it's like you have a much larger Switch that plays games much better than the Switch does. And I've spoken on this podcast many times in the past, the Switch is one of my favorite consoles ever made. So the fact that it could do that, I started to realize the magic of what the Steam Deck was, and really kind of became a fan of it the way I originally thought. But at the end of the day, it is a PC, and I do want to do a lot of the tinkering. And so I will say this. I would like to return to this product in the podcast in the future and talk more about it as I use it more and more. But my first impressions. First of all, after the unboxing, and I'll actually just send you a picture here. You can let me know what you think. But my first impressions was this thing is gigantic, kind of comically large. And originally it was a little bit of a negative. Like when I was looking at it compared to the Switch, I was like, oh, this is really, really big. Maybe this is something to bring up in terms of people who are looking for a handheld device. Maybe it might be too big for some people. And I will say it's large, huh?
Yeah.
And I will say, if you are someone with smaller hands, the Steam Deck can be a little bit difficult to use. But the one thing I will say is, despite its size, and probably because of its size, it's really comfortable to use. You have full-size joysticks, you have full-size triggers, you actually have grips on the back that a lot of times when you're using a Switch for a long period of time, your hands can cramp up a bit because there's not a lot to hold on to. But with this, that doesn't necessarily happen, especially if you're sitting down. If you're sitting down, it's very, very comfortable to use. My next impression was, I heard a lot of negative information about the screen and how the screen wasn't very good. I don't know if they've changed the screen since the first batch, but I personally think the screen looks pretty good. It's not the best screen. It's not OLED. It doesn't have the deepest blacks, but it does look pretty good. And I think the choices that they made with a 720p resolution is great, because you can run games, well, it's actually 800p, so a little bit more than 720p, but you can run games at standard resolution and they look great, because you don't have to worry about scaling the image, where if it was a 1080p screen, you'd have to scale the image and it'd probably look a little weird because of interpolation. And the third impression I'll give is Windows. There's Windows drivers, and Windows actually works pretty well. So what I've done on Windows is all running off of an SD card, and I have Fortnite installed, because Fortnite will not run on the Steam OS. So I have it running on Windows, and it works great. I was actually really surprised. I'm running on some pretty good settings. It's kind of completely replaced my Switch in terms of doing daily missions in Fortnite. So there's like so much versatility to it and stuff like that. Now, I will say, with Windows and specifically with Fortnite, there's a lot of tinkering. So I want to make that like really clear. The Steam Deck does require a lot of tinkering. It's not necessarily a plug and play for everything. If there's a specific game that you like and you're interested in the Steam Deck, I would say look at and you don't want to do any tinkering whatsoever, I would say look at whether or not that game you like or the games that you want to play in the future support SteamOS natively. And if they do, I think you could get away with it. It'll be fine. But if it is a situation where the game is unplayable, or there's a question mark on whether or not it's playable, I think if you're looking for something that you can just pick up and play at any point in time, it can get a little bit frustrating, because that's not what this device is. There does take a little bit of tinkering. So, overall, I think it's a really, really cool device. I'm actually kind of happy with it. Even though originally I was thinking about potentially returning it, I've kind of 180'd on that. And it is a really, really cool device, but there's definitely a lot of places where it can improve. So,
Hmm.
um, like I said, there's certain things I would like to talk about in the future. One, I'm going to see if I can replace my PC with it by doing some editing. So maybe editing this podcast in the future on it, see if it exports any quicker than it does on my full fledged desktop. That's one thing I'm really interested about. And the second is going to be one of the Steam Deck's killer features, which is emulation. It's been known that you can do a lot of emulation all the way up to the Switch on the Steam Deck. And that's going to be the next big endeavor that I try with it to see if this can fully replace not just my Switch, but all my older consoles like Xbox 360 to just have my games on this one device. And then the final thing I will say is battery life. There's been a lot of negative information about the battery life of like it not having the best battery life. For most games, it's pretty in line with the Switch for me, but it can do more than the Switch. So if you do want to play a AAA game like God of War or something like that, um, the battery life is going to be worse than the Switch because it's just doing more. So I think that's kind of the thing to take in. If you want to use it as like a Switch like device where you're playing more indie, lower spec kind of games, it'll last almost as long as the Switch. But if you want to do more, it's going to be a little bit worse. So I don't have much of a problem with battery life. It's just setting that expectation. But I sent you the picture of the size comparison between the Steam Deck and the Switch. Uh, and I'll put it in the video version of the podcast so people can see it. I'm curious, what do you think about the Steam Deck in terms of its size? And I don't know, is it something that you think can potentially catch more people, or I don't know? Based on what I said, do you think that maybe there's just a bit too much tinkering for the average person?
I'll still wait till I see it in person.
Okay.
As you mentioned, it is a lot larger than the Switch. From
Yeah.
the picture, I can see that. From your impressions, I can see that. But the ergonomics seem better from what you say.
Hmm.
So I'll wait till I see it in person in order to judge that. My only, I guess my only hangups, one, the tinkering, but as we said, talked about foldable laptops. This is the first generation,
Yeah.
right? So maybe the second generation of the Steam Deck, or maybe even, in this first generation still, as they push out more updates, there will be more games supported. There will be less tinkering needed. I'm not too worried about that. This is, it's still very early on in the whole life span of the Steam Deck. I guess my only hang up really is the Switch is a gaming console, but it's very much a family device,
Yeah, that's a good point.
right? And even if you look at, we talk about the size, for instance, right? If we look at kids playing a handheld console, the Switch is going to be a lot more manageable than the Steam Deck. Even if you're just, let's say, if you're playing Nintendo games because you're emulating on the Steam Deck. If you look at a little kid, like they have the Switch Lite for a reason,
Hmm.
right? And even then, the Switch Lite would be, let's say, a difficult console to hold for maybe someone 10 and under, right? There is no chance of them playing with a Steam Deck.
Yeah.
Also, if you look at the fact that, you know, let's say a game like Mario Kart, for instance, right? If you have a Steam Deck, that is a console for one person to play. If you look at a lot of the party games on the Switch, like Mario Party, like Mario Kart, like Super Smash Bros, it's, hey, we can have this console, we can take off the controllers on the side, and we can take off the Joy Cons on the side, and we can have, two, three, four people all playing with this mini controller in your hand. I'm sure there were probably talks in Nintendo as, hey, how big do we want to make this screen? And there were, probably talks that if we make this screen bigger, we'll have to make the controllers bigger. And if we make the controllers bigger, then little kids won't be able to play on it as easily. And we want this, yes, to be a gaming console for adults, but we also want kids to be able to play this too, so that you can have, mom, dad playing this console on their own, and then when they want to play with their kids, or it's easy for the kids to play too.
Hmm.
So the Steam Deck definitely isn't that. It's not a family console, so it won't ever replace the Switch in that sense, I think. In terms of, you have some friends over, some family over, we can all play off of this one console. These controllers are easily attachable, detachable. You could play, on a desk somewhere because it has a kickstand built in, and you can give someone a controller. It's not gonna be the same thing in that sense, but for the more hardcore gamers, definitely, right? You can't play Cyberpunk on a Switch.
No.
You can't, right? And as you have mentioned, there's a lot of other games that you can't play on the Switch that you can play on the Steam Deck. Whether or not they require tinkering, it requires tinkering or not, it's just at some point you'll be able to play them. So for the more hardcore space, yeah, definitely I could see the Steam Deck becoming a thing and becoming more popular. But for in terms of just like everyday family gatherings, family gaming, it won't come close to the Switch. And I think Nintendo knows that, and I think Valve and the Steam Deck know that, right? They're in that sense they're marketing to two very different people.
Yeah.
I like what the Steam Deck is, and I like what it can do, and I like what it will be able to do. But I see them as two very distinct devices simply for the fact, or yeah, two very distinct devices simply for the fact that Nintendo is more for family stuff, let's say, and the Steam Deck is more for hardcore gaming, someone who's playing games by themselves. And in that sense, I could see it possibly competing maybe with something like a PlayStation or maybe with something like an Xbox, right? If you look at, as you mentioned, having your entire gaming library on this device. If you look at something like xCloud, right?
Hmm.
You could get an xCloud subscription on your Steam Deck or a Game Pass Ultimate subscription on your Steam Deck, and you could have every single Xbox game imaginable on this handheld device.
Yeah.
That could also be a stationary device, right? That you could also dock at home. And in that sense, that's a big deal. That's something not dangerous for Xbox because they're still making money on the subscription, but possibly dangerous for Xbox console sales, right? If personally, if I had the option to, let's say, get a Steam Deck or an Xbox Series S, I would definitely go with the Steam Deck
Mm.
because I could play all the games that a Series S can. I feel like, I mean, I can't really say right now, but I feel like performance wise, it would be similar to a Series S, but it's portable.
Yeah.
I mean, I would ask you what you would choose, but you obviously chose the Steam Deck.
Well,
Um, yeah,
that's
sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say that's a very real thing that I was thinking of when the Steam Deck was gonna be sometime in 2023 or something like that, and I was truly under the impression that I would never get it. I thought about maybe I should just cancel it and get an Xbox, and I think that's a valid kind of comparison because even though the Steam Deck is portable, as you've seen from the screenshot, it's big, and it's not necessarily something that you want to carry around with you all the time. Not to mention, battery life, if you're playing a big game, is somewhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours. So you're not even going to be able to use it for very long away from a wall. So yeah, it's definitely more of a niche device than I originally would have thought. And I really like the point that you brought up of the Switch and the Steam Deck working in two different verticals because originally, and this is why hands-on impressions are so important. Originally, when I saw the Steam Deck and heard all the reviews and stuff like that, and there's so much positive reviews on the Steam Deck, and I completely agree with them. There's a lot of reason to be positive about this device. But originally, when I saw it, I thought the Switch is in trouble because the next version of the Switch, is not going to be as powerful as the Steam Deck, most likely. And it's just the Steam Deck seems like it's better in every way, including price. Because right now, the Steam Deck is very close to price of the Switch OLED model. And I imagine that the new Switch is either going to be that much or more. But after using it, what you're saying is 100% right. The Switch is a completely different type of device. And even though I have not used it at all since I've gotten the Steam Deck, because I'd rather play games on the Steam Deck, anytime I pick up the Switch and I feel just how small and slim it is to use, to me, that's not a negative of it doesn't have the big grips on the back. To me, it's a positive because it's just so easy to grab and go. And I think that's a huge benefit for it, and why I think it'll sell better than a Steam Deck ever could. The Switch and the next version of the Switch, despite the fact that it might have worse graphics or worse capabilities. But I don't know. That's probably enough rambling for me. I guess finally, do you have any questions about the Steam Deck? Either now or sometime in the future, you can bring them up. Let me know. But yeah, is there anything about the Steam Deck that you in particular would want to know?
One question I have right now.
Mm-hmm.
So you've done a 180, you were thinking of canceling it, you've gotten it, and you're very impressed with it,
Mm-hmm.
or you're very pleased with it right now. Will you invest in the dock for it also? Will you start to, I guess, build out the ecosystem for the Steam Deck? And for anyone, I guess, who doesn't know about the dock, do you want to explain what the dock is and what your thoughts are on it?
Yeah, so this is actually one very good question because I can actually already speak to this. And two, I think this is a huge aspect of the Steam Deck that's really cool. So I do have a dock, and I will hopefully do a review of it as I use it more, maybe in the future. I have the JSO dock, which there's been a lot of people who have had their hands on it on YouTube. There's a lot of reviews on it, and a lot of people are talking about how great of a dock it is. I haven't used the dock a ton because I mostly use the Steam Deck in handheld mode, and I actually really like it in handheld mode. Same thing with the Switch. I almost never use the Switch dock, but the dock works great. The Steam Deck uses a standard USB-C slot. So the dock will give you standard USB-A ports. It will charge the device, and it has HDMI out and Ethernet. So very similar to the Switch dock, and it works fantastic. It can do 4K 60, which I've tested, and it works great. And you can hook up your mouse and keyboard, and it essentially just becomes a full-fledged PC. The one downside of the dock is that because the Steam Deck is portable hardware, it will not play games in 4K. So generally, if you're docking the Steam Deck to a TV or something like that, the games are not going to look very good because the device is designed to play games at 720p. So that's a little bit of a downside. I think a lot of people have also seen this with the Switch. If you try to dock the Switch to a 4K screen, games can look really, really bad. And Steam Deck is no different. And the only other downside to the dock is, unlike the Switch, the USB-C port on the Steam Deck is at the top. So instead of just plopping it down and having everything dock automatically, you need to put it down in the dock and then attach the cable to the top, which just adds an extra step, and it's just not as sleek. So hopefully that's something that they can do in the future.
All right. Guess that's it for now. We'll hear more about the Steam Deck later. Take it easy, everyone in podcast land.
Catch you in the next episode.